Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! I, 22 male, went to an international primary school in an Asian country. Kids from all around the world and rich students went there. I was about 8 to 9 years old in this story. This white South African girl, let's call her Jay, who reeked of white privilege, was the most true and snobby girl I knew, and even as adults now, her social media indicates that she's still quite snobby. In this story, she's roughly 8 or 9 like me. She could be quite rude to anyone, but she was definitely rude to me about loads of things like my height or my clothes and so on. One day at lunchtime, I take my ball out of my locker to play with my friends at the courtyard. I'm holding it whilst walking down the stairs when Jay snatched it out of my hands, and after asking her to give it back, she kicks the ball out of the school landing and into the courtyard. I asked why she did that, and she said something like, "Because I can, loser." I trudged downstairs in defeat to look for my ball and see a very disgruntled teacher at the courtyard entrance. My ball is a few feet away from her and her lunch is spilled all around her. I quickly put two and two together. I realized the ball had hit her and made her drop her lunch. She was pissed. At first, she thinks I did it. I quickly explained that it was my ball, but Jay was bullying me and took my ball and kicked it out onto the courtyard where it must have hit her. She eventually takes my word for it and says, "Tell Jay to come here right now." With great pleasure, I think to myself. I walk to the cafeteria and sure enough see her lining up for lunch. I walk up to her and I say, "Remember when you kicked my ball out the stairway a few minutes ago?" She has a smug look and says, "Nope, that never happened." Not even looking me in the eyes when lying. I say, "Well, it did happen, and guess what? That ball hit the teacher at the bottom and she spilled her lunch." Jay stops smiling and now she's looking right at me. With the biggest crab-eating grin on my face, I take a step closer to her and say, "Well, she wants to see you right now." I believe she got sent to the head teacher or something like that. Either way, she cried. Oh, she cried. We are both in our 20s now, and even though I don't really talk to her, I pretty much don't hold any grudges. That being said, even in our teen years, she was still the same type of person, but she didn't bother me much anyway. We follow each other on Instagram, and wow, I could definitely say some things about her life choices and predicament today. But it's not my style, and I don't want to risk giving too much information about her. Alright, where do I start? My family. The Andersons. We were about that dirt in a nails countryside vibe. Back then life was simple, tending to the land, chilling with the animals, finding joy in low-key stuff. But bam bam, economic chaos hit us like a wrecking ball. So my folks decided to ditch the rural scene for city promises. City lights though, not as glam as they seem. The struggle was real, and then tragedy hit. Car crash and suddenly I'm left with a city's cold vibe as my only company. No immediate fam could take me in, but enter Grandpa Samuel, a straight-up legend. The family homestead where my folks used to do their thing became my escape. Grandpa, with hands rough from life and eyes that had seen it all, became my rock. Moving back to the countryside wasn't just about scenic views for me, it was reconnecting with the OG values and traditions. Grandpa wasn't just a guardian, he was a living storybook spinning tales of my parents and the love they had for this patch of earth. Enough background about myself and my family, let's dig into our story. It all started when Karen moved in next door. Grandpa always said that good fences make good neighbors. But with Karen, it seemed like no fence was high enough to keep her entitlement at bay. Now we live in a quite rural area, where the closest thing to traffic is a herd of cows moseying along the road. But Karen, oh no, she needed to bring the drama to our peaceful little street. The first sign of trouble was when she started parking her shiny sedan right in front of Grandpa's house. Now, we all have driveways here, but Karen insisted on leaving her car on a street. Why? Because according to her, it was perfectly positioned under the watchful eye of some street surveillance camera. One day, Grandpa decided he had enough. He parked his old pickup truck right behind her car, effectively blocking her in. I could almost hear the cogs turning in Karen's entitled brain as she stormed over. "Excuse me, why is your car blocking mine?" Karen screeched, hands on her hips. Grandpa, being the calm soul he is, looked at her and said, "Well, seems like I'm just following your lead, neighbor." Karen huffed and puffed, but eventually she had to shuffle away. Victory for Grandpa, or so he thought. Days passed and Karen's parking antics continued. One fine morning, Grandpa decided to park his car on a street. Oh boy, if looks could kill, Karen's glare would have wiped out half the country. I was sitting on a porch, sipping lemonade, when I overheard her talking on the phone. It seemed like she was calling in reinforcement. Later that night, I was awoken by the distant rumble of an engine. I peeked through the curtains just in time to see a tow truck inching its way toward Grandpa's car. "Hey, you can't do that. That's my grandpa's car," I shouted, rushing out in the night. Karen, smirking like a cat that caught a canary, stood there with her arms crossed. "Your grandpa shouldn't have parked on the street. This is my spot." I was about to argue when her friend, the tow truck driver, chimed in. "We got the right paperwork, kid. Now step aside." Defeated, I watched helplessly as they hooked up the tow truck to Grandpa's car. But Grandpa wasn't one to be messed with. Suddenly, his bedroom window flew open, and there he was, shotgun in hand. "Get away from my car, you hooligans!" Boom! He took aim at the truck's tires and fired. One tire exploded. "Run, Karen, run!" her friend yelled. They both laid on their stomach behind the tow truck as Grandpa kept firing. I couldn't believe my eyes. Our quiet rural street had turned into a Wild West standoff. Grandpa's shotgun boomed and the tow truck driver crawled back, dragging Karen with him, and they finally managed to retreat, leaving the wounded tow truck behind. The next day, Karen's car was back in her own driveway, but there was a noticeable dent in the front fender. The following days were a whirlwind of legal drama. It turns out firing a shotgun at a tow truck isn't exactly the poster child for conflict resolution. The local sheriff paid us a visit, wearing a stern expression that could rival Grandpa's on a bad day. "Mr. Anderson, here to explain why you decided to turn our quiet street into a scene from a Western movie?" the sheriff asked, eyeing the now limp tow truck. Grandpa, unfazed, leaned on his porch railing. "Sheriff, I was just protecting my property. They were stealing my car right from under my nose." The sheriff sighed. "Protecting your property is one thing, firing a shotgun is another. You could have called us." "Well, by the time you folks arrive, my car will be halfway to the city. I had to take matters into my own hands," Grandpa answered. Legal consequences were inevitable. Grandpa got a stern talking to about the proper use of firearms and the importance of calling law enforcement in such situations. As for Karen and her accomplice, they faced charges of attempted theft and destruction of property. The courtroom became our new stage. Grandma, still channeling that Wild West vibe, stood tall as a witness. The judge wasn't too impressed with Karen's argument that she had a rightful claim to the parking spot. In the end, Karen had to pay hefty fines for the attempted towing and damages to Grandpa's car. The tow truck driver faced legal consequences as well, not just for his failed attempt, but for participating in a whole misguided escapade. From then on, Karen thought twice before trying to out-entitle my grandpa. Our rural street might be peaceful, but it sure ain't boring, especially with a shotgun-wielding grandpa guarding his precious parking spot. I'll try to make everything as easy to understand as possible, but of course I can answer questions if I have to. So, when I, male 29, was 21, I got a scholarship to study in Japan. I was a college student in the US. I was very excited to go, however, a girl I was seeing ended up pregnant. We were not together but were exclusive. Of course I didn't want a baby with my friends with benefits, and also it would ruin my opportunity to go to Japan. I begged her to have an abortion since why would any of us want that baby? We were definitely not committed to each other. We had discussed abortions before as many other subjects, so I knew that she had a problem with abortions. However, she decided that she was going to keep the baby. I told her that honestly, I didn't want to be a father, but that I'll wait until the baby is birthed because maybe I'll feel different then. I didn't change my mind when the baby was born. So we agreed that I wouldn't be an active father, but I will fulfill all of my responsibilities. I had to cancel my trip to Japan to get a better job so I could pay child support. Thankfully, my parents also helped me, so I moved in with them. I almost had to drop out of college, but thankfully I was able to graduate. I still wanted to go to Japan. So when one of my ex-classmates moved in there to work, I asked him to let me know if there was any vacancy at his company. I got a job there and moved in October 2019. Ever since I couldn't come back to America because of COVID and also because the rhythm of work there is harder. So I was always working and trying to advance in my career. Of course, I continued sending the money to my son. Well, the thing is that I have vacation now and I traveled for Thanksgiving. I got here the week prior to Thanksgiving and my parents prepared a welcome party with our family and friends. They apparently got very close to my son when I was not here and they invited him and his mother. To be honest, I don't have any problems with them. Oh, you don't have a close relationship either. When I went to the backyard where the guests were, I greeted them both, but I was feeling awkward and we didn't talk much. When everyone left, my parents told me off because they expected me to be way happier about seeing my son. We got into a bit of an argument and now my mother and father are upset at me for being so cold. I don't understand why they expected me to be happier. I don't know my son too well. He wasn't very excited to see me either. But it's been far too long and they are still upset, so I need some outsider point of view since my friends are agreeing with me, but they might be doing it just to not argue with me. Edit, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was not clear in the post. But I didn't kick my son or his mom out of the party. They stayed till the end. I greeted them and I asked him about his school and his martial arts classes, and he told me he's doing fine, so I congratulated him. His mother hasn't texted me at all to tell me that the kid sad after seeing me. And now some comments on a post. Someone saying, "You're not the jerk. We can't control how we feel. And parents bonding with kids isn't some magical thing that always happens. And even less so when you've had little to no contact with the boy. Were you as upfront with your parents about not wanting to be involved in a child's life as you were with a mother? If so, they shouldn't be surprised. If not, then I could see them being surprised, yeah. But they seem to be taking it personally despite the fact that you don't seem to have any issue with them having a relationship. If you were trying to prevent them from having that relationship, that would be another story. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. Maybe assure them you are fine with them having that relationship, and that you have no intention of standing in the way of that. Might help things simmer down. Another commenter adds, "Not the jerk. I'm of the mind that emotions or lack of cannot make you a jerk. It's your actions and your beliefs that would make you a jerk. You weren't happy, so you didn't act happy. People are allowed to be mad about whatever they want, but this wouldn't be a justified anger. The kid is 8 years old and you barely know him. Why would you be excited to see him?" The third commenter goes with, "I'm a bit confused by the 'you are the jerk' comment, to be honest. It doesn't seem like OP was aware that BX and Son were invited. Did BX and Son know that OP wasn't aware of the invitation? The kid and OP are basically strangers here. OP and the ex had an agreement that although OP wouldn't actively parent, he would fulfill financial responsibilities like child support, and he never desired a child and even tried to convince the ex to consider abortion. Despite that, he respected her choice to keep the child. It is tough for a child to want a relationship with a parent who never wanted them in the first place. How could that possibly be a good idea? OP's parents perhaps expected OP to have changed after being away for so long and are upset that he wasn't. Many commenters are labeling OP as inconsiderate for not being an involved parent, but it seems like being involved might be a disastrous idea. Who thinks a relationship with a parent who never wanted the child is a good idea? He pays child support and his ex has full custody. Now onto my views on adoption. I agree that adoptees should be informed as early as possible, perhaps around age 2. However, I can say I agree that open adoption is the best option for everyone involved. It can get messy, and if the terms for open adoption were limited to pictures, updates, and access to current medical information, that would be fine. But sometimes in open adoptions, boundaries can be blurred and lines crossed. In my opinion, OP isn't being unfair here.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.